What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video by Trunk Fresh Green 34, and today we have something a little bit different. Mattel finally, at the very end of the year, released the 2022 Disney Cars poster. Now, any other time of the year this would be exciting. The issue is that all of the stuff on this poster is already out. This is like the world's biggest nothing burger, they said earlier in the year that they maybe weren't going to do a poster, and I was like, okay, why not just do one for like all the releases before Cars on the Road? Because I assumed they just were worried about spoilers for the show, but they ended up doing a poster anyway. Just a couple days ago, it was revealed by Take Five a Day. They had the exclusive reveal on it. I will leave a link to their article in the description below, because this is also their version of the image. And yeah, I thought it'd be fun to take a look at the poster and use it as a way to give my thoughts on the 2022 mainline as a whole, because I don't think I've ever done that in a YouTube video yet. Um, so yeah, we're just going to get right into it. Now, I really quickly want to talk about the actual design of the poster itself, even though that's not really the main thing we're looking at today. Um, One thing they did that was really interesting was they had this like color coordinated legend. So you've got stuff with a pink background is from Cars 1, stuff with like a light blue background is Cars 2, stuff with different shade of blue is Cars 3, and then stuff with a yellow background is from On the Road. Um, this is a cool concept. The problem is the Cars 2, 3, and On the Road colors don't really look that good. You can barely even see the yellow behind the On the Road stuff. You really have to like adjust where you're looking at the poster. Like I have to like physically move my head in order to actually see the yellow color. And then you have the Cars 2 and 3 colors, which barely look different. You can hardly tell there's a difference. So yeah, that's pretty lame. I also don't like how the cars are just randomly like thrown together on this poster. Like you have Artie and then Spin Out McQueen, which is a little weird. And then you have like Mummy costume Luigi and Ghost costume Guido next to like Murray Clutchburn. There's like no rhyme or reason to how they did this at all. They just threw a bunch of stuff on here, unlike the 2021 posters, which had everything organized by series, I guess. So I guess that's kind of disappointing. I think that's pretty much it for like the negatives that I have in terms of the actual poster design itself. So let's move right into actually talking about the main line. So I'm going to try and adjust the size here. I can't make it too big, otherwise it's going to get really blurry and hard to see because this isn't a high quality image. So I think this size works fine. And we're going to start off with Cars 1 singles. And overall, it wasn't the worst thing in the world. Cars 1 actually got the most releases this year, I believe, which is shocking because normally Cars 3 dominates the line. That's how it's been for the last like 5 years. So to see Cars 1 get such a large focus is kind of refreshing. But in terms of the new stuff, they barely did anything. So the new stuff this year from Cars 1 consisted of Bertha Botterswagen, who was a previously canceled release from all the way back in 2010. Then we have Tractor with Tire in Mouth and Keith Cone. And that is pretty much it from the first movie for singles. Now, that's not terrible. The first movie historically hasn't gotten many new releases since Cars 3's come out. I think the most notable ones were Derek Williams and Sarah Wilson from last year, who are both back again this year. Now, the three new releases we did get from the movie, Bertha, Keith, and Tractor, I really like. Bertha, I think it's great. That was one that I kind of never really thought they'd bring back because it's such a like oddball release. It doesn't really fit into any category in the main line. Like I guess you could argue it could be part of like a highway series, but what else would you put in there? I mean, there's very little you could put in there. So to see them actually do Bertha is fantastic. they've kind of been doing this trend for the last couple of years of uncanceling at least one car per year, and Bertha is that car this year. Then we have Keith Cone, who is a race fan, and I love it when we get new race fans, especially this one in particular. Even though he doesn't have any accessories to him, what makes him stand out is that in the movie he like appears. It's so hard to describe, but he's there and the camera moves across the stands and you see Keith like trying to move and get in the camera frame. It's a really fun scene. I never even noticed that until he released and people like showed images of where he was in the movie. I was like, wow, that's really cool. What a nice release. So I'm a big fan of Keith Cone. Tractor with Tire and Mouth, when I first heard about this, I was like, okay, that's kind of goofy. I don't really know why they're doing this over anything else. But after it actually came out and I saw some pictures and reviews on it, I was like, okay, this isn't the worst thing. It's a cute little release, and I don't hate it. Now, those three new releases are pretty good on their own, but again, I was really hoping we'd get more new cars from the first movie, especially because they brought back the rusty cars from Cars 1 and didn't do any new ones there, which I thought was a little weird. Same thing, they brought back the holiday cars in the main line again. They didn't do anything new there. Um, no new Cars 1 reporters or anything. No new team members, even. So, yeah, I thought that was a bit odd. In terms of the re-releases that we did get, I do think they had some pretty strong choices. A lot of this stuff, particularly the race fans and the rusty cars, those haven't been out for I want to say 6 years now on a lot of that stuff. So those I think that was a really good opportunity. It allowed more people to get them, including myself, because I was missing pretty much all the rusty cars and several of the race fans. And then the rest of the re-releases are pretty much just like a greatest hits compilation from the last several years. So you've got Yellow Hydraulic Ramon back, Derek and Sarah are back. You know, who else did they pull from? I guess yeah, the holiday cars even. McQueen with Sign, he came out a couple years ago. So, sorry, he was re-released a couple years ago. He first came out in like 2013, I think. Um, Notable re-releases, however, beyond just the rusty cars and the race fans, include Damaged the King. That is awesome. I first heard about this and I was like, yeah, they're not going to re-release them. And then they did. And it kind of blew everybody's minds because now it has opened the door for them to A, do more new damaged racers, which is something that people thought was off the table for the longest time, and B, there is now a non-zero chance that race damaged Mood Springs gets re-released. Do I think it will? Not necessarily, but there's now a chance that it could happen, a greater chance than before, I'd say. So definitely something to kind of keep an eye out for if they end up doing that. So yeah, overall, Cars 1 singles, I think it was a good lineup of re-releases. New releases, I do wish that they did just a little bit more, but the new releases that we did get from it were pretty good. So let's move into Cars 2 singles, which is not a lot. As per usual, Cars 2, they didn't really do that much for. That's nothing new. They've done that the last couple of years, where Cars 2 is pretty much the smallest, has the smallest share of the main line. Like, they don't really do much for it. Pretty much all the stuff that they did from Cars 2 falls into two categories. You have Tokyo Party and 95 Returns. And I gotta say, I'm pretty happy with the re-release and new release lineup for Cars 2. For re-releases, they opted to pick pretty much the standard, they picked like a couple World Grand Prix racers. They brought back Chisaki and Kabuto for tuners. But they also did Miles Axelrod and his microphone version, which both of those have not been out since 2015, so 7 years for those, which is kind of crazy. They brought back Mel Dorado. I think we're coming up on 8 years for him being available, so that's kind of crazy too. Made it with Balloon. That's a 2016 one. The most notable re-release, however, is Lee Race. This one's been pretty controversial because for those of you who might not know, Lee Race first came out in I want to say 14. Lee release was marked as a chase. Chase vehicles historically are pretty hard to find. I think they only come out in one case in the year that they're released in. And the unwritten rule, emphasis on unwritten, is that they can never be re released ever. If you actually look at all of the Chase releases, nowhere in the fine print does it say that they won't re release it. All it says, I think it's like Chase vehicles comprise less than 1% of the assortment for the year. Or it might even just be for the assortment of that particular case. I don't know. Um, but they've never ever said that they won't re-release a chase. So they kind of have that little legal loophole there. And it's not the first time they've done this. They did it with, I think, Luigi with Paint Bucket and Guido with Rollers in like 2017. The loophole with that one, though, was that before they were lenticular, then in 2017 they did them with fixed eyes. Lee Race, there isn't really a reason. They just kind of brought them back. And it's raised the question of, will they ever do more chases? Will they ever re-release those older chase releases? Which, personally, I'm all for. I don't really have a problem with them bringing some older stuff out of the vault, like Lee Race. Personally, I'm thinking Ishigo is probably going to be the next one. That is the another tuner that looks just like Chisaki, except instead of black, it's white and yellow with like strawberries on it. I think that's a cool release, and it kind of keeps in line with the Tokyo Party tuners that they've been re-releasing for the last couple of years. So yeah, a bit of a controversial Lee release in the form of Lee Race, but I do think it was one that ultimately wasn't the worst thing in the world. Now, Cars 2 actually got two new releases this year, and what's more is that both of them are new characters. That very rarely happens. Typically, when they do stuff from Cars 2 that's new, usually it's like, oh, here's London Ramon, but metallic. I think the last time we got new Cars 2 characters was 2019. They did Globy, Sergeant High Gear, I know that was 2018, and then like Carlo Veloci's Pity and stuff. But we haven't had a new Cars 2 character in a long time. Um, I guess Josh Coolant in 2020, actually. Okay, so hasn't been that long. The point is, the two new characters that they did do, they both appear from the 95 Returns scene at the Wheelwell Motel, being Colin Borev and Revni Grilliante. I love these two new releases. These are probably two of my favorite releases of the year. The Vern Taxi in being Revni. That was one that I didn't even know was in the movie until a few years ago, but it finally has surfaced. Like, I never thought that Mattel would do it as a diecast, but they finally have. And then what's really funny with Colin here is that when Keith Cone got revealed, um, there was I don't know how to describe it, but there was, I believe, a screenshot that I found when we were looking for Revni Grilliante as well, because I think these got revealed close together. And next to Revni in the wheel well is what looked like a green Keith Cone repaint, which of course ended up being Colin Borev. It got released, which was shocking. I didn't think they were going to do that. Now, some people have tried to argue that it's not the same mold, and they're technically correct, but they're way too similar in my opinion. I feel like they should have waited until next year to do Colin. But either way, I love getting new Cars 2 characters, especially from the Radiator Springs scenes in Cars 2. Because before that, all we had was Otis and Tom Talk. That was it. So to add Revney and Colin to that lineup is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, overall for Cars 2 singles, they didn't really do a lot, but I think the stuff that they did do was pretty okay. Um, it wasn't as good as 2021's lineup. I think 2021 they had a lot more diversity with their Cars 2 selection, but this year I don't think it's been the worst thing in the world. Then we get to Cars 3, and this is what's really shocking. There's not a lot from Cars 3 on here. It doesn't really feel like they only did this many. It feels like they did more. But this is all we got from Cars 3, and it's kind of a weird lineup, in my opinion, because a lot of the stuff on here is somewhat notable. You, of course, have your, like, obvious recurring ones like Jackson, Rusty's Cruise, Racing Center McQueen, Jambalaya, APB, Liability, etc. Those ones are out like every year now, so they're not that shocking. There are a couple of notable re-releases in the form of Cruise as Francis Beltline, which now has a fire barrel. It's not a new fire barrel; it's just one of the ones from. Oh, sorry, I'm like partially stuffed up while I'm recording this, so yeah, I'm sniffling a lot. But the fire barrel came from like one of those 2018 rubber tire derby packs, so it's not a new accessory. If you already have Cruises Francis and you already have one of these barrels, you're not missing much unless you really want more barrels, I guess. But it was kind of cool that they added in that accessory anyway to make it a little bit more appealing. They also brought back Millie, which I guess is cool. I mean, she's kind of a fun character with some cool accessories, so I like that a lot. Hot Rod River Scott, the only Hot Rod release they brought back this year. Nobody knows why this happened, but they did. But we also have some notable next gen re releases. George Newen and Flipped Over. George Newen has only been available in a 5 pack, which came out in 2019. Flipped Over has only been available in a 4 pack that came out in 2017. And it's like a stupidly rare 4 pack. So, needless to say, these George and Flip re releases are absolutely welcome. Very glad that they did those. For the new releases from Cars 3, again, not a lot here. 2, in fact. Jay with VR headset and Dana Crankoff. So one variant and one new character. Jay with VR headset's kind of a surprisingly good new release. Because it's not really the most complex thing in the world. It's Jay with some goggles on. However, they also gave him a new expression and they raised the suspension on him. So they actually kind of did a lot to make this a somewhat substantial new release. And I absolutely welcome that. Then you have Dana Crankoff, who is a new character and a new reporter from Cars 3. We don't really have any Cars 3 reporters. We have Biz Torkson and I guess Shannon Spokes, and that's it. So again, another one that I absolutely welcome. And I mean, it's pretty much just Jen Tansidian but blue with a camera. So as much as I like that we're getting a new reporter, I kind of wish they opted for a different one. I think there's like a Land Rover reporter that appears and even has a line in the movie where he discusses Cal's retirement. So I'm kind of hoping they do that one, but I guess I will accept this Dana Crankoff choice. But yeah, that's pretty much it for Cars 3. There's not a lot to talk about there either. It's pretty much just stuff that's been out before, a couple notable re-releases, and only 2 new releases. Which brings us to the On the Road singles, which is arguably where all the exciting stuff is this year. Now, I do have some problems with this. The most notable being that this does not feel substantial enough. I feel like there should have been more on the road stuff out. I don't know. To only do this many, um, it's just, I don't know. It's not like it's a terrible lineup of characters. I really do like a lot of the choices here, but I kind of wish there was just a bit more. Another problem I have is the Salt Flats releases, being Royce Revsley, Dats Jammin, Noriyuki, and Revo Koss. I guess Speed Demon is also a Salt Flats one, but she doesn't really count in this. Um, the Salt Flats releases all have like pure white tires, and it looks terrible. Griswold here has muddy tires, but you can still see the black. It's not like they just completely painted them brown. As you can see on the Royce Revsley and Revo Koss stock photos here, and even Noriyuki's, they just paint the entire thing white, and it looks atrocious. Like, it doesn't look realistic. It looks so jarring. I don't think it looks terrible on Royce and Noriyuki, I guess, but Revo I think it looks awful on, and Dats also gets a pass because you can't really see it. You have to like flip the car over to even see it. Um, but yeah, it sucks that the Salt Flats releases like these like just came out. The show just came out, and we already have inaccuracies like this. Not a fan of that. I like Greebles. I think that was a fun one to do. Um, in the initial wave, I think Racing Center Cruise turned out okay. I don't really like that she's metallic. I kind of wish they did a normal version, but you know, it is what it is. Road Trip Mater, though, is a huge scam. I can't stand this. As you can see, I will move up here and show you. Here's a regular Mater stock photo. Here is a road trip Mater stock photo. Those two are supposed to be the same Mater, yet the stock photo clearly looks different, so you think you're getting something a little different. And they gave it a new name. They called it as a road trip variant. So it tricks people into thinking that it's like actually new and different when it's not. It's like a huge scam. I hate it. I don't know why they thought it was a good idea. My kind of conspiracy theory is that they were actually going to update it to look like the Precision Series Mater. Because they did that with the plastic Maters. The on the road color changes Mater got an upgrade to look like the Precision Series one, and the plastic one that comes with the like the big radiator spring set for on the road got updated as well. So I feel like they wanted to do it for the diecast, but then didn't for some reason. I don't know why. But yeah, it's frustrating. I hate that they did that so much. But that's pretty much it for the singles lineup. There's not a lot here. Barely anything is new, and not to mention the distribution on it has all been pretty terrible. And even just the case contents in general. There were 5 straight cases this year with no new cars. That is abysmal. Absolutely abysmal. Then they came out with J with VR headset in the 6th case. Okay, that's new, fine. And then the case after that had no new cars either. And then, we got the case H, which had Keith Cone, and then the elusive, I think, case J came after that, only available in Europe, which has, Revney, Dana, and Bertha. Bertha and Revney have been available elsewhere, but Dana has not showed up anywhere. So that's, in a year with barely any new releases, it kind of sucks that we have one that's pretty hard to find, unless you live in, like, Europe. So that's pretty frustrating. But yeah, overall, the singles rollout this year was terrible. Not a huge fan of the lineup, and yeah, it just left a lot to be desired, in my honest opinion. So let's move on down to 2 packs. I'm gonna go over these a little bit quicker because there's not really much to talk about. Very rarely do they put new stuff in 2 packs anymore. The last time they really did this was 2020. They had a couple with some new releases. Last year they only had one new car in a 2 pack. This year we have the same thing, but barely. The only new release in the 2 pack lineup from, I was going to say from Cars 1, but even really in general, is this Mater. And it doesn't say it on the poster, but this Mater has a working tow hook. Personally, I think this should just be the definitive version of Mater. I think they should just add the working tow hook to the regular Mater. I don't know why they did regular Mater as a single and then this one in the 2 pack. I think that's just kind of lame. I guess. I don't know. Um, but what's a really cool thing that they did is all the McQueens this year, even like Road Trip, Racing Center, Holiday Hotshot, they even Otis and Damage the King have this as well. They added little holes in their base so that they're compatible with the Mater with tow hook. It's not just this McQueen that comes with them. That is absolutely awesome. That is a really nice feature that they didn't even really have to do, especially not for Otis and Damage the King, but they did it anyway, and I'm a huge fan of that. I hope that continues next year. I hope they keep that consistent. I think they will. But yeah, I love that. And it's yeah, like I said, it's pretty much the only new release they did in the 2 packs. There is one other one, but we'll get to that in a minute. Um, so yeah, I guess it's kind of cool. I guess I don't know. And then the rest, it's pretty much just basic re-releases. I guess you have Mrs. the King. That hasn't been out since 2015. Floyd Mulvihill, that one in particular, I do not think he's been out since 2014, 2013 even. He was one of the few that did not get re-released before Cars 3. Whereas pretty much all the other stock cars from Cars 1 did. And then we have Bruiser Bukowski. That's another notable one. I don't think he's been out since like 2010. So a lot of the re-releases this year actually were kind of notable. Now, the poster, this is not the right pity. This is not Bruiser Bukowski. This is the wide Chickix pity, which I actually think would have been a much better 2 pack. Because Bruiser's been out, even though he hasn't been out in 12 years, he's available in multiple formats. He's been out as a single, he's been out in multi packs. The wide pity though hasn't really had that privilege. So I personally would have preferred the wide pity being the 2 pack, but they didn't end up doing that. They did give Bruiser a tire stack though, which was notable because I think the tire stack was actually had the correct like yellow rims for Chick. The trade-off, however, was that Bruiser was released inaccurately because he had the Lightyear text printed on his own tires, which was wrong. But oh well, it's a decent 2 pack, I guess. So for Cars 2 packs, they only did two, all of which are notable re-releases. You have Nate Stanchion and Jessica Gian Patrol from the Meldorado show scene. So they re-released Lee Race and these guys as well to go with them. Again, they haven't been out since 2014, so that's a pretty good 2 pack. And Mike Fuse and Zen Master Pitting. Really good 2 pack, actually, because Zen Master hasn't been out for 10, 11 years. He got released in the Cars 2 mainline, and that's it. Mike Fuse hasn't been out since 2015, so again, really good 2 packs. They only did two 2 packs from Cars 2, but I think they were both incredibly strong. And then the 2 packs from Cars 3, Taco Patty, Cam and Chase, and Maddie and Melissa, not really great. Pretty common notable releases. I think the only notable one is Patty. Hasn't gotten a Thailand release, but Taco has. So yeah, overall the 2 packs from the movies are not that good. And then from On the Road, they only did two. They did Mater and K Pillar Derev, which is kind of pointless because the Mater is not new, and K Pillar is available as a single. And then they did this one, which is Noriyuki and Sarah Cogs. And even though Noriyuki is coming out as a single, Sarah is not. So you would think, okay, I guess this is a good 2 pack to get. But Noriyuki and Sarah are also in that big like Salt Flats 9 pack with the exclusive long car. So even this 2 pack has been made redundant. So all in all, the 2 pack selection pretty bad, in my opinion. It's pretty much all re-releases, and even though some of them are notable, like Zen Master Pity and Bruiser Bukowski, I just don't really think that they're really worth picking up unless you don't have them. I really wish they started doing more. Like, I think 2 packs would be a good outlet for like team members, for example, like this Chicken Bruiser pack. Do like, um, I don't know, Cal Weathers and then Cal Weathers Pity, for example. Like, I don't know, something like that. I think would make the 2 packs a lot more interesting. But as it stands, they did not really do anything that interesting. And finally, we have deluxes, which is even less interesting. No deluxes from Cars 2, and none from On the Road. How they didn't have any deluxes from On the Road is shocking. At the very least, they should have at least had an Ivy ready to go. Because they had an Ivy out in the Mini Racers line, in the plastic line with the playsets, and they're doing a larger scale Ivy that like jumps over cars. Like they clearly knew Ivy was in the show, and yet they didn't do a deluxe version with the debut merchandise. I think that's super strange and just a really it's just a goofy decision all around. And all the deluxes are re-releases. This is the first year I think to not have at least one new deluxe ever, which is absurd. Now they did do a couple notable re-releases. Cars One Mac has not been out since 2016. Craig Faster, same thing. Barney Storman and Marco, I believe, have not been out since 2010. So they did do a couple like good notable re-releases, but then they did like Van Scanlane, Red, Rotor, and the three Derby ones from Cars 3, which have all been out over and over and over again, except Van. Van, I guess, hasn't been out for a couple years, but the rest have. So yeah, Deluxe is just a straight disappointment. 2 packs, mostly disappointing, and singles were okay. Like, no, the singles weren't really that good. The on the road stuff definitely saved it a little bit, but not really. Overall, I think this line can just be chalked up to questionable at best. I don't know what was happening here. We do know that there were some changes in leadership in the Cars line, which resulted in this happening. Like they ended up planning the main line because they wanted to bring back the popular releases, which I guess makes sense. So yeah, let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on 2022. I overall wasn't really a huge fan, but hey, hopefully next year will be better. So let me know in the comments what you think, and I'll see you all next time.